Hey everybody, Checklist Painting here with a brand new video. And today I'm going to show you how to sculpt some fur. This is something that I recently learned how to do myself, and I really like the outcome. So we're going to start off. I've got some 2-part epoxy here, dull little hobby knife, and another little silicone sculpting tool, which I only need for one little thing. I don't really actually sculpt with this sculpting tool for this technique. And to show you what we're going to be working on, I've got this wolf priest here that we painted over on Twitch. And you can see there he's got that awesome white wolf pelt around the collar of his armor. And that's pretty much what we're going to be working on. Alright, so we're going to grab our epoxy, get some equal parts of our softened part and hardened part. I'm not really sure what the proper names of this stuff is, but one is like the regular epoxy, the other one is a hardening agent, and we're just gonna mush those together, get it nice and blended up. Mine is gray, so once it reaches an even grayness between the more white part and the black part, that's when you know. We're just gonna mush that all together, and then we're gonna get into our 3 easy steps to sculpting fur. Alright, step number 1. Got our epoxy here. We're gonna tear off about as much as we think we'll need, and I'm going to gently roll that in the palm with my fingers to create a little wormy shape, little sausage shape, whatever you want to call it. And I'm going to kind of test fit it, going to figure out where I want it to go. And this is why I have that little silicone tool just to help me press the epoxy down onto the model. And it looks like I needed to have the ends be a little bit more slender, so I just kind of tweezed those out with my fingers a little bit and then pressed it onto the model. So that's it. Step 1, make a little sausage shape, make a little shape, press it onto the model. Super easy. Now that we have that epoxy where we want it on the model, I'm going to take our little sculpting knife here, and I'm going to gently press a bunch of little divots into the model using the point of that hobby knife. As you can see, I'm just doing rows of little tiny divot holes onto the epoxy, kind of like the surface of a golf ball almost, right? But we're just poking little holes in there, and I'm doing fairly even little rolls. They don't have to be perfect. You know, this is fur, it's organic, it's natural, it's going to be a little bit random sometimes. But the idea is that we want to fill the surface of our epoxy shape on the model with little rows of tiny little divot holes poked by our hobby knife. And we're just setting this up for actually doing the quote-unquote sculpting part of sculpting this fur, right? And so just try to make them as uniform as you can. You know, get in there. We don't want any huge sections that have been missed out. So just get the whole surface, poke a bunch of little rows of holes on there. Again, very simple. You can see that sometimes your knife will get caught by the epoxy, so having some water nearby, kind of dipping your brush in some water. I do not recommend licking your brush like I do, or licking your knife, excuse me, because that can lead to some injuries. So don't do that. Don't try that at home. Just use a little bit of water. That'll keep that metal from sticking to your epoxy. Step number 3. All right, we're going to take our hobby knife, and starting with the lowest row, we're going to tease out those little divot holes that we poked with the tip of our knife. We're going to pull them down or to the side, or sometimes you can pull them upwards, but we want to start with the bottom row, tease those out into a little pointy shape, and then go up to the row above them and tease them kind of over top. It's a little weird, but you can see what I'm doing here. I'm starting at the bottom, and then I'm going to the row above that, teasing those holes out, going to the row above that and teasing those out to create these sharp little pointy shapes of pulled epoxy. And this is going to create that layered effect that fur has when you see it on your models or you see it in real life, right? The hair has sort of a grain to it, like a direction that it wants to grow out of the pelt. And that's what we're creating, that layered fur effect by teasing these little holes that we poked into the epoxy out into sharp little shapes. And you want to try to create that grain, that growing direction of the fur. So that's why I'm pulling them all in the same direction for the most part, but sometimes you might have to kind of shift that direction as it goes over a curve, or it has like a radial point that it comes out of. Sometimes you'll see that. You can see that on your head if you look in the mirror, like maybe you have a cowlick or something like that on the back of your head, and it kind of grows in a radial circle rather than all in one direction. And that's it. We just sculpted a bunch of fur. It took like less than 10 minutes. This is super easy. I have the head of the model separate just because I like to be able to not have to sculpt around it. Sometimes you can't really avoid that, but for ease, I like to leave the head separate. And then what you can do is do a little test fit just to kind of push the head on there to move some of those pieces of fur around the back of his head or something like that. And then you can glue that in place if you want to, or if you're like me and you like painting heads separately from the model for just ease, like painting in a sub-assembly, you can pull it off of there before it sticks to the epoxy. So that way when you finish painting the model, you can glue the head right in there and it's not going to be like pushed at an awkward angle because of the hard epoxy. You've already created sort of a home for it on the model. And you can do this basically anywhere. Like I have the little wolf pelt hanging from his belt buckle. Again, just do steps 1 and 2, press it onto the model, poke a bunch of little holes, and then go to step 3, which is to tease out those little divots with the end of your knife to create those sharp little fur points. And I really like doing it with the hobby knife because you get that really sharp point at the end of those little areas that we tease out, rather than using a more rounded metal tool or a rounded silicone tool, because then you get like rounded kind of bulbous shapes, and I don't think that looks like fur. It just doesn't look right to me. I want the fur to have those sharp little points at the end, just like real hair. You know, it's pointy. It's like little long strands that end in a point, right? So yeah, that's it. 3 easy steps. I watched a lot of videos myself on how to do this, and some people are better than others. Some are way more in depth. Some do a lot of like build up sculpting, which takes too long. And I'm like, man, I got to build like 30 intercessors. I don't have time for that. So this is really fast. It's really easy to learn, and I hope you guys got something out of it. Just one more time, again, you're going to need 2-part epoxy of your choice, a sharp little hobby knife to sculpt these little areas, and maybe another couple of tools to help push it into place. And again, you might want to have a little cup of water nearby to dab your sharp hobby knife into so that the metal doesn't want to stick to the epoxy. Again, I do not recommend putting it in your mouth and licking it. Try to use some water for that. But as you can see, comes out great. I really like this 2-part epoxy. I think it's from Armskeeper or some brand like that because it hardens a lot faster than green stuff, but you can do this with green stuff just fine. All right, hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'll catch you next time.